I may have got peak here now. It's doing yellow now. Down one and it's not doing yellow. I'm not certain I'm doing this correctly. You may want to take a peek at this. Didn't I used to have one like that? What? I'm pretty sure I used to have a hoodie that looked. Oh, I thought for sure I had a hoodie that looked just like that. It's interesting how that works sometimes. Okay, I'm just trying to, in case I have to hand it off or something. It was a long time. It does. I mean, what does it matter at this point? So we had to have it when she living at home. She walked by and see a pocket knife or something laying. Can't find my good pocket knife. Where's that? You walk by a room and look on her dresser, top of her dresser in 6 months or so. There it would be. It was our stuff, wasn't it, Tori?
What you need?
I get it. Yeah. I should have zagged. No, I'm good.
Under the cabinet.
Under the cabinet.
That's why we got sealed concrete floors, my brother. It's not a problem.
Best idea ever.
Not a problem.
Cabinet. I don't know. Just
Swiffer?
I guess. Under the sink.
Okay. Hey, we got people starting to join us. Can you hear me online out there? In YouTube land? Or whatever this is. This is Facebook land. This is more fake. So, I mean, oh, sorry.
I don't know where I put my phone. I don't even think I have it.
Oh, look, we have our captions now.
The captions were pretty dang accurate.
I
last
thought
week.
so, yeah. I was watching it too.
That's just, I could spit some conspiracy theory stuff. That just means when they listen to your conversations, they know exactly what you're saying.
Well, hopefully you're speaking loud enough that everybody hears.
Sweet. Okay. All right, we got 4 people joined up. We're gonna give it just a minute or so. I don't know where Pastor Marcia went. She'll be back in just a second. Oh,
She wants to watch online too.
oh, she wants to watch online while we're broadcasting online while she's watching online in person. So I'll call her phone. Bethany's still coming. We got somebody else has joined up.
Get her chilled and get Max all dry.
7 people are with us, and we're going up and up and up. I am unable to see who is on here. Victoria, our moderator, is able to see. And just kind of lay out some ground rules. We talked a little bit about it last week. We'll talk about it again. This is a broadcast to all of Facebook. So please do not expect that this would be the treehouse of trust, because when you say it on here, we'll keep your confidence, and so will the other 80 million people that are watching it online. Just be aware of that. Hey, Miss Bethany. How are you? So just be aware this is an open conversation, so just be aware of that. You okay? Need some help?
I was just making messes everywhere I go.
You're fine.
No, I'm really making messes everywhere I go.
Hey, Miss Bethany, don't even worry about that right now. It's all good. Please, okay?
No,
fine.
I feel bad.
Okay, well, just don't. That's what they make Swippers for. It's all good. That's why we said this twice now. That's why we have polished concrete floors. It's all good.
It's nice to know that I wasn't the only one to split my car.
Right. And you won't. Like, that's the nature of the business.
That's what I get for trying to get it
All right, so,
down to the last drop. Was it brim, filled to the rim?
We have a couple more people that'll be joining us in just a second. Just trying to. Okay, yeah, send out an app notification. Miss Bethany's here. I probably should ask for permission for Zach to go. Anyway, we'll see. All right. While we're here, I think we're back down. We probably need to go ahead and get kicking. People are probably starting to feel like we're neglecting them. If you're there online, we're gonna go ahead and jump in. Go ahead and pray. But we're using the book. It's personal. I said this last week. This book was written from the perspective of talking to youth leaders. But this book is fantastic relationally. This is a fantastic relationship book, especially from a leadership perspective or just from a believer's perspective, how to treat people with value relationally. This is a great book. That's why we chose this book. So if you're wondering, why did he choose this book? It looks like a book to youth, but it is. But it has some fantastic stuff in it. So that's why we grabbed it. There is a link, as I understand it, on our homepage at connectchurchjacks.org. And I think there's probably there's a link in any of our social media bios where you can get this book. But it's called It's Personal. So it's a great book. We're all out of them here. I think we got a good many of them, and we're all out. So let's pray and we'll get rolling. Let's see. Anybody want to start us off? Pray. Andrew, you mind starting us off? You don't have to if you don't want to.
Jesus, we want to thank you for letting us come together and minister in your name, God, to come and learn from Pastor Kelly, God. We appreciate and cherish the time that we have to gather in freedom, God, here in this country. And we pray for those that are overseas doing your work out in the world, God, that you would keep them safe. Give them the community to have gatherings such as this.
Thank you, Father. Yeah, I agree. All right, we're going to start off at chapter 2 today, and I'm going to be talking about Do You Know My Name is where chapter 2 starts off. Part of being a good believer, when I think about it, when I started thinking about it, part of being a good believer is developing relationships. To develop relationships, you kind of have to be able to get personal. Our whole vision statement that we've had all these years is we're connecting people to God, to people, and to purpose. We say the first most important thing we do is connect people in relationship to the Father through Jesus. And then after that, like it, is connecting people to relationship with other people. That we're not called to do life alone. Well, that takes some vulnerability. That takes some community. That takes some work. That takes seeing value in someone else beside yourself to be able to get real and to get where they're at. And we're also talking about connecting people to purpose. Well, and I've said this a bunch of times, if you think that you found your purpose in life and people don't have anything to do with it at all, there's nothing to do with people, then I don't know if you found your complete purpose in life. Because God is all about people. If it's His purpose for your life, then some way, some form, some fashion, people are going to be involved in it, even if it's just a ramification of them benefiting from what you do. So people are key to us having success in life. I don't know that you can have success in life in God's eyes without having people involved in your life. I don't know that you can do that. So valuing and connecting to people requires us to know something about them. The first thing, the initial thing, usually is, if we're going to be honest, in our society, the first thing people ask is, hey, what's your name? The second thing usually is, especially I know for guys, the second thing is, what do you do? Why? Because they're going to estimate your value based on what your name is and what you do, who your folks are, and what it is that you do. That's kind of shallow and superficial, but that is the first few questions that people ask. A lot of times, ladies, what's the first thing they ask you?
How many kids?
How many kids do you have? Who are you married to? Are you single? What in the world is that about? It almost feels like you're trying to estimate value based on that, but a person's value is so much more than any of those things in God's
Well,
eyes.
it feels
And
kind of weird just going in for like just straight to the, I don't know. It's like it's an easy roundabout way to kind of get to know something about a person. It's not too personal, you know. Just kind of a seems to be an easy way, but I guess if that's the only place you go, and you stay on the outer skirts of who that person is on the inside, you don't really get there, and you've not really met them.
I guess when you meet somebody, do I need to pass it around? Okay.
I can speak up.
Do you want to throw me a handheld and we'll just set the handheld up here? And we can I'll just clip it up just like my handheld, and I'll just clip it on and hand it around if people have something to add. That may be the easiest way, I don't know, yeah.
You're not the microphone, right?
Oh no, that's way difficult. No, we'll just pass this one around.
Talk loud.
We'll talk loud.
Okay, we'll talk loud. Yeah, I guess if it's the first time you're meeting someone, if you start asking questions about, their,
What's your personal call?
yeah, what tell us all your personal failings. What are your biggest failures in life? What do you, yeah,
Lead in with that.
you want to go right in for all the information that people really don't want to share the first time you meet them. No, that's not a good way to make friends. What's the thing they used to say, the book they said, how to win friends and influence people? What's the guy's name, the sales guy? Zig Ziglar. I hadn't heard that name in years, but yes. All right, so we'll go ahead and jump into this. Carmen Farina was an educator in New York City for almost 50 years. She went on to serve as chancellor for 2,000 New York City schools and as the head of the New York City Department of Education. That is a huge job. Reflecting on her career, Farina recounts how she was born in Brooklyn during the 1950s to parents who fled Spain during the Spanish Civil War. When she entered kindergarten, she was the only non-English speaking child in her class. Imagine the challenges of trying to integrate into a classroom where no one speaks your language. Not only would you need to learn where to sit, when to raise your hand, how to ask permission to go to the bathroom, you would have to learn to do with this with an entirely new language. Jump in right there. How do you think that relates to a new believer or a new person trying to come to church? Like to an environment that they've never been in before, that they don't know where the bathrooms are, they don't know what to do with their kids, they don't know if people are going to look at them funny, if they sit in the wrong seat, there is a Christianese language that we speak in church, whether we like it or not, whether we know it or not. I try to get away from it, but the truth of the matter is you really can't. And when people first get saved or seeking or looking to see what's going on with the church, how do you think they feel when they come in to an environment for the first time? How did you feel? Anybody got any thoughts on that?
I think you probably feel much like she did. You're a foreigner in a foreign country. You don't really understand what's going on or where to go or what to do or anything like that.
Why did these crazy people stand up and lift their hands up? Why did they say, how many times are we going to stand up and sit down?
It's kind of like when I went to Catholic church with my brother one time, and I felt so foreign. I did not know what was going on the whole time, but just unfamiliar with what everything's about, basically.
Yeah, just the opposite of that. I was raised in a Catholic church.
Oh, okay.
And went to a
to
Christian
figure out what these crazy Protestant people were doing.
But, the whole time you're talking, I'm thinking about, so this is not even church, but just the unfamiliarity of things, that when Nathan went to see our daughter and her husband in New York, they took us to an ice hockey game in New York, down in, where in New York, in Brooklyn? But we were holding on to their tailcoats through the streets of New York City, where to go in the stadium. It was like, don't lose me. And then when I got up in the game, I don't know anything about the game, so I don't know when when they're killing each other, why is everybody excited about it? It was totally bizarre to me. So I could see how, not even in terminology, I was clueless. I had no idea when to clap or when to get excited or who was a good team and who was a bad team. So we just followed what they did. So that was really, I think that's one of the most boring experiences I've ever had from start to finish.
I'm sure. I mean, hockey is really just, it's a game that's played during a fight, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Game that's played during a fight.
We were way up at the top, so you had to, you couldn't hardly see them anyway.
Couldn't even see the fight. I came here for the fight.
Foreign.
So, new believers or people looking for a new home church or however, whatever that looks like, it's got to be an awkward environment for them to come into for the first time. So how do we treat them? You know, how we treat them a lot of time depends on whether they feel at home or whether they feel awkward or whether they feel more awkward than they would anyway. I think that's a lot of time. One day, Farina's father got a postcard from the school indicating his child had been absent for 6 weeks. As a father who had personally taken his daughter to class each morning, he was confused. So he went back to the school and asked, "Why don't you know my daughter is here every day?" Farina's teacher responded, "I can't pronounce her last name, and she doesn't answer to the name I gave her."
Oh, my God.
That is a problem. That is an issue. So, I mean, we have school teachers here. Can you imagine deciding that you can't pronounce a child's name and I'm going to call you this? I'm just going to give you a different name and you answer to that because I can't pronounce your name. I can't be bothered to learn how to pronounce your name. Can you imagine doing that? I mean, to me, that seems like it would be extremely degrading to that child. Anyway, so what happens when we take the time to find out who God made someone instead of just assuming or presuming? What happens when we actually take the time to get to know someone? How do you think that makes them feel?
Much better, of course.
Value? Anybody out there online have any thoughts?
Yeah, Vanessa, about your previous question, said, I was welcome with open arms and I'm thankful for that. But I'm scared of being rejected due to past church experiences. Thankfully, we found a home with God for that church for sure.
Absolutely, you are welcome here. We're glad that you're here, Vanessa. We love you very much. I have had more than once, and I'm not trying to, because we can always do better, but that is something that I've heard more than once, is that people have said when they came here that people made them feel welcome, like they were glad that they were here. And so that is something that we value in our culture, and we want to promote that and make that grow. That's extremely important. So Carmen Farina, who eventually became the first in her family to graduate from college, was marked absent, not based on her attendance, but based on one teacher's approach to calling roll. This event shaped Farina's personal strategy as an educator during the keynote address at the National Association for Bilingual Education. Farina said this: "Mispronouncing a student's name essentially renders that student invisible. A promise I give to every parent in New York City is your child will be spoken to by the name you give them, not the name someone else gives them. Have you ever considered this thought? How you say someone's name can be personal or shallow." How you say someone's name can be personal or shallow. You ever thought about that? We say names in flippant ways all the time, but have you ever thought about what a careless tone, a dismissive look, or a lazy pronunciation actually communicates? Marcia? Do you have anything like you were fixing to? You know, when we meet people, especially when they're coming into an environment that they're unfamiliar with, and we treat that as flippant, we treat that as common, we treat that as not precious, they feel that. They know that. When you're too busy, you know, sometimes it's hard to see the forest for the trees. And when we're busy serving, when we're busy going about doing the chores or the activity that we've been given to do, and we're doing the stuff for the people. Sometimes the stuff can wait in lieu of not being gracious or not helping the people. That's like one of the things that I've tried to say over the years is if somebody needs to know where something's at, don't point it to them. Take them there. Take them there and hand them off to someone else. Why? Because they have value. I mean, and we've got people who do a good job of that.
You know, think about the song that we did Sunday, and that He knows your name. Well, if it's important to God to know your name, shouldn't it be important to us to know their name as well?
It seems like what He values, we should value. It just seems that way, doesn't it?
Might be a good idea.
I mean, just thought.
We have some neighbors, and their primary language is Spanish, and they have kids that are our kids' ages, so they play together all the time. And Izzy came home one day, and she's like, I'm not going to call Mateo anymore. She's like, I'm going to call him Mateo, because that's how his mom says it.
Absolutely.
Gosh, like, how did I never think of that?
Yeah.
Like, of course we should be pronouncing his name the way his mom says it.
Because the way Mama says it is right.
It's right, yeah. Like, it's not Mateo, it's Mateo.
Yeah, but most
Mateo.
people can't say my name the way my mom says it. 'Cause my mom says it with 2 syllables. It's Ted, not Ted. So,
Did she say it like that all the time or just when she was angry?
no, that was her normal. No, if it was in trouble, it was my full name, Theodore Kirk.
Yeah.
If I heard Theodore Kirk, it was over. I was out.
Yeah. I'm not coming home for a
Yeah,
while.
which is another thing. How your name is said can immediately infer, what I mean with our own children. If I call my boys a certain way, they know, okay, it's serious now, it's on. But other ways, there's playful names, and I think it's important. This goes back to getting to know the person. There's the formal when you first come into a business or a place, and other than the military where they don't care what you feel. Their job is to destroy you when you first come into boot camp. But for the churches and in your business, you generally want to, and so it's important to ask them to pronounce it. And then some names in my business, I've come across names that I have to promise you, it is tough. But when you show them a genuine desire to try to pronounce it right and understand it, they start laughing and they relax and they realize that, because they know if their name's tough.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I got people call me Ken because they hear Ted as Ken. And so I got one guy to this day, if I ever see him, he says, "Hey Ken, how you doing?" I go, "Fine, Raymond, how are you?" I gave up trying to tell him it was.
If you think about that and you think about nicknames, there's some nicknames that I've been given had over the years. I'm not going to say them. I don't want nobody to call them. But there's certain people that have little pet nicknames that you might be okay with them using that because of relationship familiarity. But you have to earn that right in somebody's life.
Yeah.
You don't just automatically get given that.
Yeah.
It's almost like, I know when musicians want to learn to be jazz musicians, improvisational musicians, the first thing they teach them is to play it by the notes. You play it like it's supposed to be played. And then after you get good at that, then you've earned the right to improv. You've earned the right to have some improvisation. Familiarity, and I don't mean negative familiarity, but positive familiarity, when you're in someone's life, it's almost like having some refrigerator rights. There's certain people you'll bring to your house, and hey, listen, hey, come in here and give me a hand, whatever. And then there's other people you want to keep out of the kitchen and the living room. Y'all have anybody like that? They don't have refrigerator rights. But if you're hungry, go. Then get some leftovers in there, go, whatever you want to do. So anyway, I think that we have to, when we first meet people, we have to treat that as precious and not be too, I think Marcia hit on it a while ago, not be too forward and take too much liberty when we first meet people. I think it shows them respect. You have something?
Ms. Cruz says, tone of voice matters. I say I was a teacher, and I always ask her to pronounce their name. And Andrew Hargraves just tuned in.
Andrew Hargraves just, hey Andrew, welcome. Ms. Cruz, you're absolutely right. Tone of voice matters. The way we treat someone, not just what we do, but how we do it, why we do it, shows through. It absolutely shows through. So, anyway, So you're probably thinking, yeah, but I'm not very good with names. Neither are we. I am not good with names, but it's important. Neither are we, but there's significance to a name. It's part of someone's identity. When we dismiss a person's name, we forfeit their trust to become more personal. That's what I was saying a while ago. Most people care more than they will admit when someone doesn't take the time to learn and remember their name. Maybe that's why Jesus called Zacchaeus by name. You remember Zacchaeus was a tax collector, and he was hated. Imagine again what it must have been like for Zacchaeus as he rounded the corner in Jericho to see the gathering crowd. Think about the rumors that have been passing excitedly from one person to another. My cousin Mary told me that he fed a crowd of thousands with only 5 loaves and 2 fish. That's nothing. My nephew told me that when Jesus visited his village, he stopped to talk with people with leprosy, and after he'd spent time with them, they went to see the priest and the leprosy had gone. Maybe these rumors sparked hope in Zacchaeus. He knew firsthand that no one hung out with tax collectors. Everyone saw them as avaricious and dishonest. I don't even know if I said that word right. Anyway, whatever, hard word. And maybe that was true. They did bring in a sizable income by demanding more tax than Rome required and then keeping the excess. It was a protection racket. So Zacchaeus talks about in here that Zacchaeus went and he climbed a tree. He tried to get in here, tried to get in there, and people kept probably cutting him off because they didn't want him to be around. But he finally decided, he wasn't tall in stature. I'm going to climb this tree. I'm going to see Jesus. I'm going to get to Jesus despite the crowd. And the Bible says that when Jesus came by, it's fine, you're fine, you're fine. That when Jesus came by, Zacchaeus was up in the tree and Jesus called his name. Most people wouldn't even probably look Zacchaeus in the eye. And Jesus cared enough to stop and call his name. And say, listen, I see you, Zacchaeus. You're valuable, you're important. And not only did Jesus do that in front of Zacchaeus, he did that in front of all these people. When people first try to come into a relationship with the Lord or try to come and find a new church, try to find a new church home, they may have come out of some stuff that they're worried about people looking at them and judging them. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. And the truth of the matter is every one of us came out of something. And so I try to convey with people that are in that situation that, hey man, you're in good company. You don't know who you're sitting next to. Has anybody ever felt that way? Any of you online, any of you here ever felt like, I don't know if I'll be accepted here because of whatever reason? Have any of you felt like that in any kind of a church situation? Anybody online? Okay. Anybody here? Ever felt like you didn't know if you were going to be accepted or not in a situation? I have. I can tell you, I absolutely have. Especially in the church that I grew up in, when the Lord called me to something in ministry. The church that I grew up in, all of those people knew me. And they knew my issues. They knew my history. They knew my past. They knew my janky things that I did that I'm sure they heard all about from my parents, frustrated and all. They knew all that. And so there was a part of me that wondered, am I going to be accepted here? Is this something that I'm going to be able to get past? And so, yeah, I've been in that situation. I've absolutely been in that situation. And I did some janky things around that church. But I can tell you this, the pastor there loved me, still loves me, was at our dedication service. And he was the one sitting across the desk with some of the janky things that I did when I was a kid. There was one thing that was so bad, he asked if he could record it one time. If he could record the conversation, it was bad. And so, Victoria, you got something? They tried a couple of churches where they felt like they were being judged and didn't go back. That's why it's important to make people feel welcome. Vanessa said the same thing? Yeah, that's important. It is important. So, anyhow. So it talks about here, so can you imagine Zacchaeus' internal monologue? Zacchaeus, look at yourself. People hate you. You don't even like yourself. And here you are, a grown man. Well, not that grown. He wasn't that tall. Let's be honest. But you're climbing a tree like a child. And Jesus spoke, Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus. And Jesus looked at him and said his name. We could speculate how Jesus knew Zacchaeus' name. Maybe he'd heard about him. Zacchaeus was probably notorious. He was obviously one of the most hated guys in town. How many short, greedy, rich men could there be in Jericho? You know what I mean? Perhaps Jesus just assumed, I bet this is a guy who everybody's talking about, who's stealing everybody's money. Or then again, it could have been that Jesus just knew Zacchaeus' name because he was Jesus. Remember, Jesus was God. Could have been that he just knew Zacchaeus. Do you ever wonder how many times Jesus played the God card? He was God. Probably a lot. He could have had a little bit of fun walking down the road, calling people by name, even though he'd never met them. I bet he did. I bet that was fun. Oh, hey, John, how's Deborah doing? When's the wedding? Haven't never met them. That'd be great. Hey, Sarah, so sorry your dog got run over by that chariot. Hey, Alex, how's the back pain? I bet it's not hurting now, is it? You know? But what if Jesus said Zacchaeus' name for another reason? Not because Zacchaeus had a reputation that preceded him, even outside of Jericho, not that Jesus enjoyed showing off. What if Jesus simply knew the power of saying someone's name out loud? Zacchaeus must have been surprised to hear his name, especially when it was spoken in a positive way by someone like Jesus. Imagine the flood of emotions that suddenly erupted in Zacchaeus' brain. That's me. He took a minute to call why? Why me? With all these people here, why would he call my name? So that's me. That's me, and everybody heard this holy guy call my name. Why would he call my name? That's me, and Jesus is talking to me. That's me, and he's actually interested in getting to know me. And I think a lot of people would be surprised if they really realized, especially before Christ, that the God of the universe is interested in having a relationship with them. And that there are actually people out there that love God and love them even if they can't do anything for them. You know, in the world, a lot of times, if not most of the time, love is contingent upon what can you do for me. And it kind of can fade when you can no longer do something for me. But Jesus is not like that. The Father wants to have a relationship even when you can't do anything for him, even when you're in your lowest state. He wants to have a relationship with people. So, anyway, he talks about that was a day-changing moment. When Jesus said Zacchaeus' name, Jesus modeled honor. When we use people's name, when we go out of the way to get to know somebody, and their name is just the entry-level thing. When we go out of our way to get to know somebody, we're honoring them. We're showing value in them. You know, one of my definitions for honor is to show value in. You know, when you show honor or defer to a person, when I, show honor to Mr. Nathan, when I use his name and I do it respectfully, and I treat him like a person that's respectable, what I'm showing is that I see value in him. That I see, not only do I have value, but the Lord, especially if I'm representing Jesus, Jesus values you. And the way that I treat you as a representative of Jesus shows that. It displays that. Anybody have any thoughts? All right. Have you ever thought about how long it takes to say someone's name? In a split second, Jesus said one word that affected Zacchaeus' sense of identity, his belonging, and purpose. With one word, Jesus reminded the crowd that this man was not a position, a chief tax collector, but a person, Zacchaeus. Like we talked about a while ago, what's the first thing people ask? What's your name? Second thing is usually, what do you do? And so, what we're really asking people is, what's your position in life and how should I value you based on your position? Well, God doesn't value us that way. He doesn't place value that way. I've said this a bunch of times before, but it always occurred to me, we live in a capitalist society. Now, a lot of times in people's minds, that's a dirty word. But what that is supply and demand. Something is worth what people are willing to pay for it. So what were you worth? Where Jesus was willing to pay the highest price, highest ransom ever paid for anyone or anything for you. You sitting there watching on camera. Jesus paid the highest price ever paid for you. Here's what that means. He saw value in you. And he knows your name. He knows you. He knows you better than anybody knows you. He knows you better than you knows you. He knows you. And he knows you because he has value. And he created you. So, anyway, honor is to show value in. I honor you because you have value to me. Jesus recognized Zacchaeus in front of a crowd of people who had every right to dishonor and discredit him. Jesus seized a powerful opportunity to leverage one word to make a meaningful and honorable statement to Zacchaeus. Have you ever thought about how long it takes to say somebody's name? I would say just a split second. So, he was not addressing him as his position as chief tax collector that everybody hates, but as Zacchaeus the man. Can you imagine what this might look like for people who live in a world of labels? We live in a world where people want to label you. And a lot of times it's not the label that God has for you. It's a label that they want to put on you. It's a label that they think you should have. It's a value that they see in you. Other people's value in you, other people's value in people that are coming to Christ, new people coming to church, visitors, whatever, people or seekers. We don't have a right to put a value on them. We don't get to do that. That's not my job. That's not your job, is to put a value on people. Jesus put the value on them.
Right.
He put the value on them when he died and shed his blood and bought their right to be redeemed. He put the value on them. But the world that we live in wants to put labels on people so that they can value them. Okay, this is a rich kid. This is a poor person. This is a popular person. This person's not popular. This person's an athlete, so I should get to know them. Hey, maybe one day they'll go to the NFL and they can do something for me. This person's a nerd. This person's a gamer. What does that even mean? Too many of us underestimate the power of someone's name. It's often the first word anyone learns to recognize, speak, or write. Research consistently reveals a certain rise in a person's brain activity in response to his or her own name. In fact, comparative brain imaging indicates that our brains respond differently to our own name than they would to any other name or sound. This is even true for infants in the first 9 months of life. It's as if a person's brain lights up with the response, "That's me." When I read this, I thought about a story just in my own life. Before my grandson, I have one grandson. Hope to have more grandchildren. I mean, I'm not trying, no rush. There's no rush on anybody. I'm just saying, I love grandchildren. So and grandchildren love me. I may be the problem grandfather. That one that, what was Grayson say, the sketchy grandpa. Anyway. But Grayson, before he was born, his mother lived in the same house that we did, and she would go to work. She worked late, very late job, and she would come home, and we'd talk about how she did that day. She was like a straight, a straight commission kind of based deal. And we'd say, "How'd you do?" And she'd tell me, and we'd kind of celebrate
Or count the money.
Or count the money, which was great. The girl got paid in cash. It was great. And so anyway, we would do that, and then before she went to bed, I would pray for Grayson. I'd be sitting in the chair, and she would come over there by me, and I would lay my hands on her stomach, and I would pray for Grayson, and I'd call him by name every night. And she'd go to bed, and then the day that Grayson was born, Marcia sent some pictures that were horrible, and I blame it on the photographer because it scared us because we didn't know what he was going to look like. Those first two pictures were sketchy. But Victoria and I decided no matter what it is, we're going to love this child. Did we, Victoria? That's the truth. That is the truth. But they rolled him out, and Marcia was with them. And now they rolled him out on the little cart with the little plastic see-through cradle thing. They rolled him out, and he was looking the other way. And they rolled him out, and I said, "Well, hello, Grayson Metters." And he turned and he looked at me. He knew my voice. He turned and he looked dead at me. Like, that's who you are. His name had value. He recognized his name because we've been using it. He recognized his name from day one, and he recognized that he already had a relationship with the person that was calling his name. He recognized that voice. And I think there's something in that. I think there's a lesson in that. You know, if we're going to have a relationship with people, we have to be open to them. We have to value them for whatever, for what Jesus made them to be. We have to value them. You know, this world tells people a lot that you have no value. You have no value because of this, because of that, because your bank account, because your status, because of your marital status, because of your lack of marital status, because of you did this sin, you did that sin, the other sin. Jesus paid the same price for all of us, including me. He didn't pay any more for me. He may have had to shed a little extra blood for me. I don't know. But he paid the same price for all of us. And if we're going to treat people like they have value, it takes a minute. It takes some time, but it's worth it. It's absolutely worth it. I love that story. I'll never forget the look on his face. They go on to say, I, Virginia, had a bad habit of confusing the name of my son's current girlfriend with the names of his former girlfriends. What can I say? He was popular. Calling Tiffany Tamara the first few times definitely made for a few awkward encounters. Oh, I'm sure. But my son said it definitively upped his game, or definitely upped his game, when I took the time to learn the correct name of the girl sitting beside him at the dinner table. That's, you know, if it's done on purpose, that's like the height of passive aggressive. It's great passive aggressive. And this other lady that helps write this book says, I, Kristen, had the privilege of attending 3 years of high school under the leadership of an extraordinary principal named Jenny Springer. Not Jerry, Jenny. Jenny Springer. One of the many things that set Dr. Springer apart was the way she intentionally learned every student's name. 20 years later, I watch in admiration as she continues to recognize former students by name and how those students consistently share the way she influenced their stories. In every area of life, we can be better leaders, better communicators, better parents, better friends, better volunteers if we know people's names. That puts us on a different standing with them if we are at least familiar enough with them that we know their names and can value them by their names. And as simple as it sounds, pronunciation and spelling matter. I can remember I misspelled Caitlin's name on something one time. I can remember, and that was, I can't believe I did it, but it's the truth, I did. I misspelled her name. And she was mortified. I deeply, deeply hurt her feelings. And Caitlin, if you're watching this, I apologize again. Been apologizing for years. But it deeply hurt her feelings when I misspelled her name. This is my own kid. Can you not, Daddy, do you not love me enough that you can't get my name right? You've known me for a while. You know, that's hurtful. That's very hurtful. That was one of, I've got a lot of low points as a dad, a lot of high points as a dad, but that was probably one of my low points. That was very hurtful and totally unintentionally. So, anyway, admit it. When a barista carelessly misspells your name on your double latte, there's a slight disconnect. If a server pauses to ask how to correctly say your name, you might smile. I've heard that. I don't know if it's true that sometimes baristas, if they don't like you, will intentionally misspell your name to convey, hey, I really don't like you. So people can use that as passive aggressive. The Santa Clara County Office of Education recognized the importance of correctly pronouncing a child's name and raised awareness at a national level through the My Name, My Identity campaign. Similar to Carmen Farina's experience, the campaign focuses on the cultural awareness involved in honoring the names of children of all ethnic backgrounds. They challenge students to take a pledge to respect others by pronouncing each other's names correctly. According to these leaders, when you start correctly saying someone's name, you can foster a sense of belonging. And that, I mean, if we're trying to bring people into the kingdom, isn't that what you want to do? You want to foster a sense of people belonging. I mean, you don't want to alienate people, even if they sat in what you think is your chair. We don't want to alienate people. Find another chair. Hey, just for future reference, connect. If you're used to sitting in the same chair every day over and over and over, and someone else comes in and sits in your chair before you do, find another chair. There are a lot of chairs. Find another one. Don't say a word. Find another chair. Just for clarity. I'll find another chair. There's a microphone clipped under my seat. I'll send somebody to get the microphone after I find another chair. Whatever. Everybody is welcome here. And let me sit at the foot of the cross. We got a big one right up there. So, can you imagine what it would communicate if we took the same pledge as leaders, volunteers, or as believers? If we took the pledge and really meant it and took the time to learn people's names. Can you imagine what it would mean? Tori, you got anything online? All clear? Okay. My father, this is Virginia writing this, it said, my father served as a lead pastor of a church for many years. One day I was looking through one of my father's books and noticed a piece of paper inside that said, know and learn the name of each person. As a pastor, he recognized that knowing someone's name is personal. And it wasn't confined to church. I noticed he took the time to remember the names of the cashier at the local supermarket and their neighborhood sub shop. This man was pastoring his community. That's what he was doing, which is awesome. He communicated value with each encounter by addressing people by their names. When you say someone's name, you're doing much more than just saying their name. You're making a statement about a person's existence, about their purpose, and their value. When you say someone's name, you're saying something is worth remembering, that someone is worth remembering. Chances are it's much more important than it may even be more important than they realize. When you say someone's name, you silently communicate an answer to a number of underlying questions, like this. Do you notice I'm here or not? Do you know when I'm not here? Does my presence make a big enough impact on you that when I'm not here that it matters? It does matter. When you're not here, it matters. Do you like being around me? If you say someone's name, do you like being around me? It answers the question, do you recognize my uniqueness? Do you recognize that I'm not just part of a crowd, I'm a person. I have hopes and dreams and failures and pains and successes. I have something to bring to the table. You know, that is one of the things that they don't say here, that it really does. When you take the time to learn someone's name and act interested in them, it says to them, I believe you have something to bring to the table. You have something to offer in this relationship. You have something to offer in this situation. It's very important. Saying a person's name won't change their everyday reality, but it could give them just enough hope to believe that they're worth remembering. People need to know that they're valued. They need to know that they're important. They need to know that Jesus values them. And as a church, you know, I speak for this church, as a church, they need to know that we value them. We need them to know that we see value in them. Pastor Ted, you know you can jump in anytime you got you. Okay. So start doing what Jesus did for Zacchaeus. Learn how to identify someone in a way that communicates value. I have a question here. How do people respond to us when they think that they aren't valued? How do people respond to us when they think that they aren't valued? What do you think their response to us is going to be if they think that you don't care about them, that they're not valued?
Well, I don't think they're going to put any effort into the relationship. I can imagine them not starting up a conversation with me, avoiding me. I think they would just choose to not.
Avoid us?
Yeah.
Not putting the effort into the relationship?
They don't see the value in if I don't see value in them, then they're not going to see the value in the relationship either.
Right.
It's going to be the unusual person that will push through that to make the relationship happen. That's the unusual.
Yeah, if they don't think you see any value in them, why should they value the situation? Why should they? Yeah, that's actually good. So how do you think that differs when someone feels like that they are valued? What do you think the difference in response is there?
Totally opposite. Yeah.
Do you think they'd be open to relationship?
And hooked in and ready to move forward with you.
We have something online.
Absolutely. Andrew Carter says, not connected to the group or the person, they feel they have no value. And Sue Cruz says they don't care about you or your needs.
So would you say that? I'm sorry, would you say that one more time louder?
Absolutely. The question was, how do you think people feel when you don't use their name or use it incorrectly or don't acknowledge that it makes a difference when they're here? And Andrew said, they feel not connected to the group as the person. They probably feel like they have no value. And then Sue Cruz says they don't feel like they don't feel cared about or like their needs are not cared about. And then Andrew again just now popped up and said, with value we belong and feel a definite connect to that.
Wow. Thank you, Ms. Cruz. Thank you, Andrew, for giving those. You're absolutely right. They don't feel valued. They probably don't feel connected. If the group doesn't care enough to know their names, they don't feel connected. You know, it occurs to me as a group, if all of us don't know their names, that's one thing. But maybe if I'm missing the mark there and not knowing someone's name, but you can remember their name, or you can remember their name, or you can remember their name, or there are multiple people that do remember their name, even if one or two don't, that can make a difference in the way they feel connected. Oh, at least somebody cares that I'm here. You know what I mean?
One thing that I've noticed in today's society is everyone feels entitled to some form of respect from everybody around them. And a lot of people, if they don't feel the respect coming from you, why are they going to give you any respect in return? And I think it gets lost in that. I mean, there's people that work in businesses every day, they wear their name tag, but no one ever addresses them by their name, and it's right there where you can read it. It's not like if you have to ask a question, you can just, hey, thank you, so-and-so, whatever your name is, you'll have the name tag. I mean, that's a form of respect to them as well without them even realizing it. And sometimes they lie that and you just say their name just because you read it. It's a very effortless thing to do is to read someone's name. And the people looking for respect, you have to be able to get it too. It goes both ways.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Jeremy's saying that, if I understand correctly, Jeremy's saying that if you expect to be respected, then you should be a person who respects other people. And not using someone's name or knowing anything about them absolutely conveys that you don't have any respect for them. And in this day and time, if we're going to have relationships, people expect to be honored and expect to be respected. Thank you. That's a good point. You're absolutely right. Mr. Nathan?
We have, I've worked for several companies, and I've heard this many times, you probably heard this too. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
That is, I mean, yeah, absolutely that. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. You know, some people may see that as cliche because it's used a lot, but it's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
It's correct. You know, you can't speak, and we talk about this a lot in different leader situations. You know, part of what we do as leaders in the body of Christ is there time to time you have to correct somebody. Well, if you don't have any relationship with somebody, you don't have a right to speak into their life correction. You don't have a right to speak in their life suggestions. If you don't have relationship, I mean, that's not an all the time thing, but it is a sometime thing. Yeah, they don't care how, and if you're trying to sit up here and tell somebody something in their life that would benefit them, your words don't have a lot of weight if you don't care about them. If you don't know anything about them and haven't bothered to find out their situation and what they're dealing with and how they're living, the struggles they have, the burdens they're carrying, and you're looking at their life and making a judgment on their life and you don't know anything about their life, why should they listen to anything you have to say about their life? It's absolutely true. Thank you, Mr. Nathan.
We, when we first came to Connect Church, we came for one Sunday over the summer, and then the next Sunday was Preach at the Beach, and I'm like, oh no, we can't go to Preach at the Beach because it's just too awkward. Nobody will talk to us. We won't know anybody, and so we didn't come back. And then we came back in September after attending a different church all summer where nobody knew our name or got to know us. And when we came back to Connect after having only attended one service several months before, Lindley remembered us, Rich remembered us, Leanne remembered us, and they all came up and like, oh hey, welcome back, and like greeted us by name. And like Lily was like super sincere in the way she asked me, like, how did you guys get through Irma? You know, and it was really nice and really
Wow.
wonderful for us, and that was a big reason why we stuck with Connect, was just people remembering our names and like being sincere and like, because it was our first hurricane, and you know, how was it for you guys, and were you okay? And
Bethany, I've never heard that story before. Wow. I'll talk to you later more about that story. We probably don't need to go into that story anymore right here online. You know what I mean? But we'll talk some more about it. I'm glad. Thank you. I'm talking to Lindley. Thank you for remembering their names, because we're really glad they're here. We love them. We love your family. That's awesome. That's an awesome story. All right. So here's some. So what do we start to do to try to remember people's names? Identify someone in a way that communicates value. How do we respond? We talked about that. But here are the practical tips to remember someone's name. I got to be practical because, you know, theory is one thing. Let's break it down to some practicalities. Say the name out loud. I try to do this, and it helps sometimes. It doesn't always help. When someone tells you their name, say their name out loud a couple of times, multiple times. In the course of conversation, it talks about try to use their name again. Try to use their name a couple of times if you can in the conversation. That conveys a couple of things. Number one, it's a tool to try to help you remember it. And number two, it's a tool to let them know that you're trying to remember their name, that you see enough value in them, that you're trying to make an attempt to connect with them by knowing their name. Because if you use someone's name in a conversation more than you normally would, that leads, why are they using they're trying to remember my name. They must see value in me. So I think that's a great practical way. It says pronounce the name correctly. Practice saying the name exactly. If the individual has a self-chosen name that differs from what's on their attendance sheet, it's okay to go with Bobby instead of Robert. If the pronunciation is challenging, it's okay to ask for help, just to be sensitive about how you ask. Educator and researcher Rita, having a hard time with this name. If she was here, I'd ask her. Coley, Kohli. Rita Coley explains two approaches to how an adult responds to a challenging name. It matters what you do when you're in front of a person struggling with their name. Is it framed as my inability to say someone's name, or is it framed as the person doing something to make my life more difficult? Is it your fault because you have a difficult name, or is it my fault because I'm having a difficulty pronouncing it? It puts the burden on you instead of on them. That actually makes a lot of sense. It says, repeat the name until you get it right. Pronouncing a person's name correctly communicates respect for their history, their family, and their culture. Those are big things in this day and time. You know, we want to communicate respect for someone's history, their family, and their culture. We have a lot of different histories, a lot of different cultures, a lot of different backgrounds, a lot of different ethnicities that come to this church, and we like it that way. We want to communicate that. That's what we want. Actually, that's what we've tried to do from the beginning. That's what we've planned for and tried to move towards. And so we have to communicate that value through the way that we treat people. And if they have a name that, is LaTanya on here? Is LaTanya watching?
She popped on earlier. Maybe? We'll see.
LaTanya, you watching?
We'll see.
LaTanya, when they told me their son's name is Jehaziel, it's a king in the Bible. I didn't know the name. I'm gonna be honest. I'm a pastor. I didn't know the name, but I remember trying my best to be specific about that name. And if you'll ever watch when I'm around Jehaziel, I try to use his name. And Jehaziel loves me.
Miss Jackie chimed in and said, associated with something like my name. I would associate with Jack Penny. By the way, my mom named me after her. I still try to do that all the time.
So name association. That's actually one of the things they go into here. Thank you, Miss Jackie. Name association is extremely important. How can I associate this name with something that'll help me remember it? I have a little thing here. I went to Marcia's class. Marcia's been a teacher for a long time. I remember, I'll never forget this. She was introducing me to some of her kids, and there was, I can't remember. There's like 30 kids in there. That's like overwhelming to me to start with. I don't know how teachers do what they do. I don't know that I could do it. But there was a little young man in there, and I kept saying, "Hey, little man, how you doing? Hey, little man." And he'd ask me a question. I said, I called him little man a couple of times. And there was this little girl that was his friend. I'm not sure it wasn't his little girlfriend or whatever, but it was his little friend. And she looked at me like I was nuts. And she said, "His name is Jerome." Like, you know what that little boy's name is? It's Jerome. And you know what? I will never forget that little boy's name is Jerome. That's his name. But it was very offensive, not only probably to him, but to the little girl that was his friend. It was offensive that I was calling him little man. And that's just a term of endearment for me, but it certainly wasn't a term of endearment for him or for her. And I learned something that day. That his name was important. His name is Jerome. And I think from then on, the rest of the class, I may not have known anybody else's name in that class, not even that little girl's, but I knew who Jerome was. So, I mean, it's important. So, discover the name's history. Many names have a story. If you really want to get personal, discover more about the story behind a person's name. You may hear a wildly fascinating story about their great Aunt Florence, or you may learn that their name has a significant or symbolic meaning. In many cultures, a name denotes tradition or family history. Taking the time to ask questions about the origin of a name can give you insight into their culture. You may even find that a kid has never heard the story of his or her name, and you could prompt a little mutual discovery for you both. The more you understand the story of a name, the more insight you'll have into this person's story. People laugh at the story of my name. My first name is Kelly. And both of my grandmothers had the maiden name Kelly. Now let me explain that. One of them was from Camden County, Georgia, and the other was from Shreveport, Louisiana. But both of them, so there's a lot of distance between those two. But both of them had the maiden name Kelly, and it's spelled the same way. And my mother and father gave me that name. I hold that name dear. I don't know if I should say this or not, but I don't care, so I'll say it. I'm sketchy. I have the Kelly family motto tattooed on my shoulders, on my back. It's Turris Fortis Mihi Deus, and it means God is my strong tower. That is the story behind my name. I value my name not just because it's what my mama arbitrarily called me, but because there's some substance behind it. And that's what I cleave to. God is my strong tower. And that means something to me. So when somebody says my name with respect, it means something. When somebody says my name with disrespect, that also means something to me. Makes me want to say, you need to put some respect on it when you say it. People's names mean something to me. The story behind their name means something to me. God is my strong tower. It says you can write the name down somewhere. If the way that I learn is I hear it, I write it, and then I say it. That's how I learn. That's one of the best ways for me to remember stuff. And so if I would write names down, not just say it multiple times, not just hear it said, but write it down physically, I definitely believe my percentage of retention would go up. I need to do some of this. Connect the name visually. Whatever you can reference and whatever you can tie to, whatever you can reference and tie to. And it says, here's the last thing that I thought was great. Pray the name frequently. Pray for them. Pray the name frequently. Here's an interesting idea. Praying for people doesn't change how God sees people. It changes how we see people. Praying privately for someone by name will affect how you see that individual. Praying publicly for someone by name will affect how they see themselves. And if we pray for someone frequently, that name gets ingrained in our minds and in our hearts. It goes from here to here. You know, it changes things. It's one thing to have a mental assent, it's another thing to have a heart assent. Victoria?
Miss Vanessa popped on and said, when my mom was pregnant with me and trying to decide what to name me, one day my brother came home from his kindergarten class and told my mom the name of his crush was Vanessa, and my mom loved the name. So that's her story.
That's awesome, the story behind her name.
Miss Cruz just popped on and said, I write names in doctor's office employees in my calendar.
She writes the name of doctor's office employees in her calendar. So when she makes a date in her calendar, she writes the name of the person that she's dealing with there in that calendar. That's great, because if you have to call back to change it, you can talk to an individual. Hey, can I talk to this one? Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you, Miss Cruz. I appreciate it. Those are great. Those are great stories and great suggestions. Reggie, remember the first time I heard someone pray my name. I was 7 years old when I walked past the bedroom of an elderly aunt who had adopted my mom as a child. Through the open door, I heard her say my name in her prayer. I quietly stopped and listened. It forever changed the way that I saw God, that I saw myself, and even the way that I saw her. What if one of the best ways to move from shallow to personal is to begin a habit of praying for someone you know by name? Maybe you could set a reminder on your phone for a certain time of day. Maybe create a prayer calendar so you can pray for a few people each day or week. You might be surprised how it changes you and how it changes them. Learning someone's name is an important first step in being personal. We're getting ready to close. It matters if you say someone's name. It matters how you say someone's name. It matters how often you say someone's name. In a world where so many people are known by a number on a jersey, by digits on a carpool tag, by random usernames, by national statistics, in some places by a social security number, or by an employee number. You know, a lot of people are just known by employee numbers. Known by an inmate number. And I'm serious. There's a lot of people that have been in that situation that they have been referred to by a number and a system. And when you have somebody that's used to being referred to by an employee number, by an inmate number, by those kind of numbers, just a cog in a wheel, just part of a system. When you go out of your way to learn their name, especially when you know their history, know their past, and you still value enough to know their name, that makes a difference to them. That makes a difference in how they see themselves, and it makes a difference in how they perceive whether or not they'll be accepted in a situation. We need more caring people who know people by name and personally. What if you simply decided to surprise someone today by using their name correctly? Whether you realize it or not, there is someone in your life stuck in a tree looking for someone who will stop. They're quietly wondering, is there anyone out there who will acknowledge me? Is there anyone out there who will remember me? Is there anyone out there who's willing to connect with me? Is there anyone out there who's willing to engage me? If you want to live the kind of life that gives hope, begin by knowing a few names. Everybody needs somebody who knows their name. Any thoughts? Comments before we close?
I'd just like to chime in here about how the opposite of that is just as important. Like, if someone new comes into this church and you meet them and you hear their name and you remember their name, maybe you remember something else about them, like, say, a family comes in with children or they're from Texas. But let's say they come in the next week. Something I learned from my father is my father, every time he went into a group, he would be the first one to introduce himself to someone who didn't know him. He wouldn't wait to be introduced. He would walk up to him and say, "Hey, I'm Joe. Who are you?" He would do that first. But also, even if he knew that they might know who he was, he never let them guess who he was. I saw him introduce himself to people that he had met before, but because maybe they didn't remember him, he goes, "We've met before. I'm Joe, and you tell me your name again." I think people aren't sometimes afraid that you forgot their name, but if you know something about them. I heard him say one time, "I forgot your name again, but you have 2 kids that live in Texas, right?"
Oh, that's good.
And because he remembered that part, they were more than gracious to say, "Well, I'm Sam from Texas," or something of that nature. But he's still hooked on again to something that he learned about them, temporarily forgot their name. So I think that could be just as important if you can't remember the name right away, but it'll come to you.
Remember something. Sounds like your dad was a great pastor.
He was a great
There's a lot to that. It sounds like your dad was a great pastor.
So one of the reasons that you don't remember people's names, one of the biggest reasons, is that psychologically you're more focused on making sure they got your name than you are listening to their name.
Ooh.
So that if you ever are a part of Toastmasters, that's the first thing you learn, is that when you go to introduce yourself, you're more focused to make sure they got your name right. Because think about how quickly you'll correct them when you've introduced yourself if they say your name wrong.
Ooh.
And so one of the key elements is to make sure that you're not as concerned about your name as you are getting their name. And that's where most of us, that's the starting point to getting to know their names. And of course, the second thing is you can't be embarrassed to ask them and
Right.
let them know, like your dad, you just mentioned your dad, if you forget their name, they would rather you acknowledge that I forgot your name,
Yes.
or that, you know, I want to keep calling you Sarah, and I know it's not Sarah, and then they correct it. So when Sharon and Don Cusick used to first come, I would call Sharon by the wrong name I got Don, no problem. And I looked at her and I just said, I said, I'm so sorry, I keep wanting, and now I don't remember what it was, but it was a totally different name. And she was gracious to me and laughed about it, but it was like, this is driving me, why am I having because normally I don't have that difficulty, but for her, whatever there was, whatever I got that first Sunday that was wrong, it ingrained in, and I had to reprogram my mind. But, you know, just, I think the honesty of it, when you honestly,
Yeah.
you know, but that's, to me, you know, in my life, because I've been in sales my entire life, this right here is the number one open door, get you where you need to go to get moving in an opportunity in a relationship. You've got to know their names. And there's nothing more in my life for me than when I call a back office and I'm working with somebody and they don't even remember my name, or they call me by something different, or they care less about my name, because all they're doing is they're wanting to get the call done and get off and move on to something else. So yeah, so just when you go to introduce yourself, start to, because all these things are good about the visually and all these relating it to this, but the number one thing is you got to pay attention to them and get clarification in the beginning, and then you'll set yourself up for more success. Than to sit there and try to make sure your name's pronounced right. Don't worry about your name.
Right.
That'll come later.
So if I understand what you're saying, Pastor Ted, what you're saying is regard them as more important than you.
Honor them, yeah.
Regard their name as more important than your name.
I mean, do you think Jesus really cared what Zacchaeus called him, or Zacchaeus, or however you
No.
actually pronounce his name?
As long as it was Lord.
He was focused on Zacchaeus, not him.
Right.
And, you know, he knew who he was. He
Oh,
didn't need
yeah.
the reinforcement from Zacchaeus. He needed Zacchaeus to know who he was.
So when we're not doing that, what we're really being is insecure.
Yeah, we're selfish.
We're showing selfishness and insecurity if we're more concerned that they remember our name than that we
But I think
remember
that's
theirs.
usually probably subconscious. I don't think we realize we're doing that. I think it's subconscious.
Thank you. Let me off the hook a little bit because I struggle.
Well, I mean, I think there's a twofold part. There is, all of us have things that happen where we never intend to come off a certain way. But there are people out there that could care less. They're there to, they see you. I mean, think about servers. Do you really take the time to hear your server pronounce their names and call them by their name when they come back to your table? Or do you acknowledge that they said their name, you smile politely, now get me my ribeye, medium rare, and don't mess up I mean, and I have to be honest, there have been, you know, we're being honest here, there's been times where, you know, I've gone to a restaurant and really didn't pay attention to the name because I knew what I wanted. I eat there all the time and I just want them to bring me that food. But the minute something's wrong, then I immediately need to know their name because I want their attention. And then you go, God, why didn't I pay attention when they gave me their name? So it just kind of, this is a great, because this is the basis of everything else. I mean, he would have never been able to go and have the opportunity to speak into Zacchaeus at his house, or Zacchaeus, I always said Zacchaeus, so you're going to have to try to break that on.
I mean, I sang Zacchaeus was
Yeah.
for how long?
But he would have never been able to affect change in Zacchaeus' life and go to his house if he didn't start with calling him by name.
Acknowledging that he had value.
Yeah. So,
That's good, Pastor Ted. Thank you so much. That's very good. Thank you, Pastor Lanley. Well, anybody online have anything, Tori, or are we clear there? Okay. Don't want to leave any comments unaddressed. Ma'am? Okay. Well, then I'm going to pray and we'll go ahead and close tonight. That's where we're at. Lord Jesus, we love you. We honor you. Lord, thank you that you would give us the grace to show honor to others, that you would give us the grace to choose others over ourselves, to choose to value other people because you value people. Father, we love you. And we just pray that you would make us better believers, that you would make us better leaders, that you would make us better as a church family, as a church body, in being a welcoming church body where people feel valued when they come here. Lord, we love you. We love people. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you. I love you, and we'll see you Sunday. And next week, same Wednesday, same time next week. God bless you. Have a great evening.